What if I told you that beneath the soil we walk on, hidden beneath layers of time and forgotten tales, lie the remnants of entire kingdoms that once shaped the course of history? These lost civilizations vanished without a trace, swallowed by jungles, deserts, or the unforgiving sea whisper to us through ancient myths and crumbling ruins. They stir something deep within our imagination, a longing to uncover the secrets of rulers who commanded golden cities, of cultures that thrived in ways we can barely fathom. Today, we're embarking on a journey to 25 of these legendary realms, places so extraordinary that their very existence feels like something out of a dream. Think about it, how can an entire kingdom simply disappear? Not just fade from memory, but vanish so completely that its location becomes a riddle debated for centuries. From the fabled streets of Atlantis, drowned beneath the waves by the wrath of the gods, to the jungle-shrouded temples of Dorado, where gold was said to flow like water, these lost worlds captivate us because they defy explanation. They're the ultimate what-if stories of human history. What if we could walk their streets? What if we knew why they fell? The mystery is irresistible because it reminds us that even the mightiest civilizations are fragile, that time can erase even the grandest achievements. But here's the thing, these aren't just stories. Every myth, every whispered legend often holds a kernel of truth. Archaeologists have unearthed real places once thought to be pure fantasy, proving that our ancestors weren't just spinning tall tales. They were preserving echoes of something real, something extraordinary. So as we dive into these 25 lost kingdoms, remember, you're not just hearing myths. You're piecing together fragments of a puzzle that stretches across continents and millennia, a puzzle that might just rewrite what we thought we knew about the past. Ready to begin, let's step into the shadows of history and uncover what was lost. Of all the lost kingdoms that haunt our imagination, none sparks more debate than Atlantis. The story first emerges from the writings of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who described it around 360 BC as a powerful island kingdom beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. According to him, Atlantis was a marvel of engineering with concentric rings of water and land, towering statues and canals plated in precious metals. Its people were said to possess technology far ahead of their time, harnessing energy from crystals and mastering sciences now lost to history. But their arrogance angered the gods, and in a single day and night of fire and flooding, the entire civilization sank beneath the waves, vanishing forever. Plato insisted Atlantis was real, but here's where things get fascinating. Was he recounting actual history or crafting a moral fable? Some scholars argue he invented Atlantis as a cautionary tale about hubris, a doomed utopia to warn against the dangers of unchecked power. Others point to his detailed descriptions, specific geography, timelines, even the names of Atlantean kings, as evidence he was preserving an older tradition. The debate has raged for centuries, and modern archaeology keeps fueling it. Take the island of Santorini, for example. Around 1600 BC, a volcanic eruption obliterated the Minoan settlement of Cantre'r, a sophisticated Bronze Age city with advanced plumbing and stunning frescoes. Could this disaster have inspired the Atlantis legend? Or consider the Richat structure in Mauritania, a mysterious geological formation so perfectly circular that some believe it matches Plato's description. Then there's the Azores Plateau, where underwater ruins have sparked claims of man-made structures, though skeptics argue they're just natural rock formations. Theories stretch from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, with some even linking Atlantis to ancient astronauts or lost hyper-civilizations. But perhaps the real power of Atlantis isn't in proving its existence, it's in how the myth endures. Whether allegory or lost history, Atlantis forces us to question what greatness looks like, how civilizations rise and fall, and what secrets might still lie hidden beneath the ocean's depths. After all, we've only explored a fraction of the seafloor. Who's to say what ruins might still be waiting just out of reach? While Atlantis vanished beneath the waves, another lost kingdom was said to glitter above them, El Dorado, the Golden One. This legend didn't start as a city of gold, but as a man. Deep in the Andes, the Muisca people of Colombia practiced a breathtaking ritual. When a new leader rose to power, he'd cover himself in gold dust, then paddle to the center of Lake Guatavita. There he'd dive into the waters, washing off the gold as offerings to the gods, while his people tossed treasures from the shore. To the Spanish conquistadors who heard fragments of this story, it twisted into something else entirely, a metropolis where gold paved the streets and temples blazed with precious metals. The obsession began with Gonzalo Pizarro in 1541, lured by whispers of a jungle kingdom richer than the Aztecs or Incas. His expedition ended in disaster, men eating their horses, then each other, but the dream didn't die. Sir Walter Raleigh later claimed he'd found evidence of El Dorado in Guyana, even mapping a city called Manoa on a lake. He returned to England with empty hands and a severed head, his own sons lost in a skirmish. The irony, the Muisca did have vast gold wealth, but not as the Spanish imagined. Their craftsmanship was legendary, creating intricate golden figurines called tunjos, not to hoard but to offer. Modern archaeology reveals how myths warp reality. Lake Guatavita, drained multiple times since the 1800s, yielded gold, but no city. LiDAR scans of the Amazon have uncovered vast networks of terraces and roads, proof of sophisticated cultures, though not the gilded utopia of lore. Some argue El Dorado was never a place but a metaphor, the human craving for the unattainable, a mirage shimmering just beyond reach, yet the search continues. In 2010, a team claimed to find cave paintings pointing to a hidden city in remote Colombia. Others theorize El Dorado was a distortion of the Inca capital, Cusco, or even a collective memory of pre-Columbian trade routes. Whatever the truth, the legend endures because it's about more than gold. It's about the cost of greed, the stories we tell to justify our obsessions, and the civilizations erased in the pursuit of a myth. Maybe El Dorado's greatest treasure isn't metal, but the cautionary tale it leaves behind, a reminder that some kingdoms are lost not to time, but to our own relentless hunger. High in the thin air of the Himalayas, where snow-capped peaks pierce the clouds, lies a legend so enduring it seeped into our very language, Shangri-La. Unlike Atlantis or El Dorado, this mythical paradise wasn't born from ancient texts or conquistador greed. It sprang from the pages of a 1933 novel, James Hilton's Lost Horizon. But here's the twist: Hilton didn't invent the idea. He tapped into something far older, a Tibetan Buddhist belief in Baal, hidden valleys of enlightenment shielded from the outside world. These sacred refuges, said to be accessible only to the pure of heart, were places where time slowed, sickness vanished, and wisdom flourished. Hilton's Shangri-La was a utopia frozen in time, a lamasery where inhabitants lived for centuries, surrounded by art, music, and libraries preserving humanity's greatest knowledge. The novel struck a nerve, especially as the world lurched toward war. People craved the idea of a sanctuary untouched by chaos, a place where beauty and peace weren't just possible but eternal. But could such a place exist? Look to the Hunza Valley in northern Pakistan, a remote oasis where glaciers feed emerald green terraces and apricot orchards cling to cliffsides. The Hunza people were once famed for their extraordinary longevity, with claims of lifespan stretching beyond 100 years. Explorers in the early 20th century dubbed it the Shangri-La of the East, though modern science attributes their health to diet and geography, not magic. Then there's Tibet's Tsangpo River Gorge, long rumored to hide a waterfall-fed paradise until expeditions proved it impenetrable, fueling speculation. Even Bhutan's Dezong's fortress monasteries perched on sheer cliffs evoke the isolation and serenity of Hilton's vision. Buddhist texts describe Baal as physical and spiritual realms, discoverable only when the world is ready. Some scholars argue these stories preserved real locations, valleys used as retreats during invasions or political upheaval. Others see them as allegories for inner transformation. The irony, while Westerners hunted for Shangri-La's physical form, Tibetan monks often spoke of it as a state of mind, a harmony so profound it rendered geography irrelevant. Today, places like Zhongdian in China officially rebranded as Shangri-La to attract tourists, complete with faux lamasseries and souvenir stalls. Yet the myth persists because it answers a deep human yearning, not just for hidden gold or advanced technology, but for a world where time doesn't erode, where wisdom isn't lost, where the best parts of us might survive. Whether nestled in some undiscovered valley or carried within, perhaps that's the real Shangri-La we've been searching for all along. Among the mist-covered isles of legend, none lingers in the collective imagination quite like Avalon, the mythical resting place of King Arthur, where swords were forged and wounds were healed by magic older than memory. Unlike the golden cities or drowned empires we've explored, Avalon's power lies in its ambiguity. It's not just a place, but a symbol of respite, of renewal, of a world just beyond our grasp where the veil between the mundane and the miraculous grows thin. The earliest mentions of Avalon appear in Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century chronicles, where he describes it as an island of apple orchards, its very name derived from the Welsh word afal, meaning apple. Here Arthur's sword Excalibur was crafted, and here, after his final battle at Camlan, the wounded king was ferried by the enchantress Morgan Le Fay to be healed. But what makes Avalon extraordinary is how it transcends its Arthurian roots. Celtic mythology speaks of Annwn, an otherworldly realm of eternal youth and abundance, often accessed through water or mist. Avalon mirrors this a liminal space where heroes don't die but wait, suspended between worlds. Glastonbury Tor in England staked its claim to Avalon's legacy in the Middle Ages. After monks discovered Arthur and Guinevere's bones there in 1191, conveniently reviving the abbey's fortunes, the town became synonymous with the legend. The Tor's strange spiral path and its occasional transformation into an island during floods fuel the connection. Even today, pilgrims flock to its slopes, drawn by whispers of ley lines and the chalice well's iron-rich waters, said to carry healing properties. But is Glastonbury the real Avalon, or merely a placeholder for our longing? Archaeology offers tantalizing hints. The Somerset Levels, where Glastonbury sits, were once a watery labyrinth of marshes and islands, matching descriptions of Avalon's inaccessibility. Nearby, the ruins of a 1st century lake village suggest a community skilled in metalwork, echoes of Excalibur's forging. Yet skeptics argue Avalon was always meant to be ethereal, a poetic device rather than a pin on a map. Perhaps the truth lies in the persistence of the myth itself. From Celtic cauldrons of rebirth to the Holy Grail's quest, Avalon represents humanity's oldest yearning, a place where pain ends, where broken things are made whole. Whether it was a real island, a spiritual concept, or simply a story that outlived its origins, Avalon endures because it answers a question we're still asking: where do we go when the world wounds us, and is there, somewhere, a shore where we might find peace? While Atlantis captured imaginations in the West, the East had its own sunken legend, Lemuria, a vanished continent said to have once bridged India and Africa. The story begins not with ancient myths, but with a scientific puzzle in the 1860s. British zoologist Philip Sclater noticed something bizarre. Lemur fossils appeared in both Madagascar and India, but nowhere in between. How could these primates have crossed such vast distances? His theory, a lost landmass he named Lemuria, after the lemurs which he believed had migrated across this now submerged bridge. But here's where folklore and science collided. Tamil traditions in southern India spoke of Kumari Kandam, an advanced kingdom swallowed by the sea thousands of years ago. Ancient Tamil texts described a land stretching far beyond present-day shores, home to great scholars and poets until floods devoured it. Some even claimed it was the cradle of human civilization, predating Sumer and Egypt. When Sclater's theory reached India, nationalists seized on it, merging colonial science with indigenous stories to argue for Tamil cultural supremacy. The idea took root. Maybe Lemuria and Cumri Kingdom were one and the same. By the early 20th century, occultists like Helena Blavatsky wove Lemuria into their cosmologies, describing it as a paradise of psychic giants with egg-laying hermaphrodites, a far cry from Sclater's zoological hypothesis. Then came plate tectonics. In the 1960s, the theory of continental drift dismantled the need for a sunken land bridge. Madagascar and India, scientists realized, had once been joined as part of the supercontinent Gondwana before slowly separating over millennia. The Indian ocean floor showed no evidence of a recent cataclysm. Lemuria, it seemed, was pure fiction, yet the legend refused to die. Off the coast of Tamil Nadu, fishermen still point to submerged ruins near Mahabalipuram, calling them remnants of Cumri Kingdom. Satellite imagery has revealed geological structures that, to the untrained eye, resemble sunken cities. And in a twist of irony, while Lemuria was debunked, scientists now study lost continents like Zealandia, a mostly submerged landmass near Australia, proving that Earth's geography is stranger than fiction. Lemuria's legacy is a reminder of how science and myth dance together. What begins as a rational hypothesis can spiral into legend, and what's dismissed as folklore sometimes echoes forgotten truth. Whether a Tamil kingdom sank or not, the story endures because it speaks to something universal: the terror of being swallowed by the sea, and the longing to believe that greatness once thrived where now only waves remain. Off the coast of Brittany, where the Atlantic's waves slam against jagged cliffs, there's a legend whispered in the salt-kissed air, the story of Wise, a city swallowed by its own sins. Unlike other drowned kingdoms, Wise wasn't just lost to time or nature's wrath. Its downfall was a moral fable, a cautionary tale of hubris and desire, wrapped in the tragic fate of its queen, Dahat. Picture a city so magnificent its towers gleamed like mother of pearl, its streets paved with gold, protected by a towering gate that only one key could open, a key guarded by King Gradlon himself. But beneath the splendor lurked excess. Dahat, his headstrong daughter, ruled the nights with wild revelries, dragging the city deeper into decadence. Some say she took lovers only to drown them at dawn. Others claim she stole the key from her father's neck, unlocking the gate during a storm to welcome a mysterious knight, who turned out to be the devil himself. The sea rushed in, and by morning, Wise was gone, leaving only the mournful toll of church bells beneath the waves. Could this haunting myth have roots in real catastrophe? Brittany's coastline is littered with sunken settlements, victims of rising seas or tsunamis. The Bay of Douarnenez, where Wise is said to lie, was once dry land before glacial melt flooded it around 5000 BC. Folklorists note striking parallels between Dahat and the Celtic sea goddess Morgan, who lured sailors to their doom, a poetic echo of how coastal communities personify the ocean's cruelty. Even the name Wise might derive from Cur, Breton for low city, hinting at a memory of lands lost to encroaching tides. But the tale's endurance isn't just about geology. Wise is a mirror held up to human frailty. Medieval monks reshaped the myth to warn against sin, painting Dahat as a pagan temptress. Later, romantic poets revived her as a tragic heroine, a woman punished for defying patriarchal control. Modern feminists reclaim her as a symbol of autonomy, drowned for refusing to conform. The city's bells still ring in art, music, and protests against climate change, a metaphor for civilizations teetering on the edge of self-destruction. Dive into Douarnenez today, and locals will point to the submerged rock formations they call the Gates of Wise. Scientists say they're natural, but the poetry remains. Whether Wise was a real city or a collective memory of drowned shores, its power lies in the warning it carries, that the greatest walls can't hold back the sea or the consequences of our own choices. After all, isn't every lost kingdom, in the end, a story we tell ourselves about the fragility of human ambition? Far to the north, beyond the howling winds and frozen wastes, the ancient Greeks whispered of a paradise untouched by time, Hyperborea, the land beyond the north wind. Unlike the drowned cities or jungle-shrouded treasures we've explored, this mythical realm wasn't lost to disaster or conquest. It was said to exist in perpetual spring, where the sun never set, where sickness and old age were unknown, and where a race of giants lived in harmony under Apollo's favor. The god himself was said to winter there, drawn by its eternal warmth, while swans carried prayers to its golden temples. But was Hyperborea pure fantasy or a distorted memory of real Arctic cultures? The Greeks weren't the only ones with tales of a northern utopia. Norse sagas spoke of Thule, a land of endless daylight, while Scythian traders brought rumors of a place where people slept 6 months of the year, perhaps echoing the Arctic's midnight sun and polar night. Even more intriguing are the ancient petroglyphs found near Russia's White Sea, depicting swans and solar symbols eerily reminiscent of Apollo's sacred birds. Could these carvings be fragments of a shared memory, a cultural bridge between Mediterranean myths and Arctic reality? Some scholars propose Hyperborea was inspired by early contact with the Proto-Sami or other circumpolar peoples, whose shamanic traditions involved sun worship and trance journeys, echoes of Apollo's role as both healer and seer. Others point to geological clues. Around 9000 BC, before glaciers receded, the Arctic Ocean may have been a milder lake surrounded by habitable land. Could oral traditions have preserved this lost geography? The legend took a bizarre turn in the 20th century when Nazi mystics latched onto Hyperborea as the ancestral homeland of the Aryan race, blending Greek myth with racist pseudoscience. But strip away the distortions and Hyperborea's core endures, a vision of a world untroubled by strife, where nature and humanity exist in perfect balance. It's a dream that transcends cultures, from Greek bards to Inuit storytellers, a reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, we imagine places where the cold can't reach and the light never fades. Whether a mistranslation, a mirage, or a metaphor, Hyperborea's greatest power may be its ability to make us wonder what lies beyond the edges of our maps and what truths might still linger in the stories we've forgotten. Deep in the shifting sands of Arabia's empty quarter, where dunes stretch like waves frozen mid-crash, lies one of history's most tantalizing desert mysteries, Iram of the Pillars. This legendary city, mentioned in the Quran as a place of towering wealth and hubris, was said to be adorned with gold-laden palaces so grand that its people believed themselves invincible. According to Islamic tradition, the ruler of Iram, King Shaddad, defied the warnings of the Prophet Hud, insisting his empire could rival even paradise itself. As punishment, the city was swallowed by a sandstorm, erased so thoroughly that later generations doubted it ever existed. For centuries, Iram lingered in the realm of myth until satellite technology cast an unexpected light on the story. In the 1990s, NASA radar images revealed faint, geometric patterns beneath the sands of Oman's Ramlat Jadala Desert, structures eerily aligned with ancient trade routes. Archaeologists dubbed it the Atlantis of the sands, sparking debates. Were these the remnants of Iram or another lost caravan hub? The site, known as Ubar, showed evidence of collapsed wells and fortress walls, suggesting a city that met a catastrophic fate, possibly sinking into caverns left by underground water erosion. But here's where folklore and science diverge. Bedouin tribes have long spoken of Iram as a cautionary tale, a symbol of divine retribution against excess. Pre-Islamic poets like Imru al-Qais wove verses about a glittering metropolis lost to time, its pillars now whispering to the wind. Some scholars argue Iram was never a single city, but a collective memory of the Nabateans' rock-hewn marvels like Petra or the incense-trading kingdoms of southern Arabia. Others point to the Quran's phrasing, Aram, the city of pillars, as possible wordplay, referencing a tribe rather than a place. The truth may lie in the sands themselves. The empty quarters dunes, some reaching 600 feet high, bury and reveal ruins in cycles as if guarding secrets. Recent LIDAR surveys have identified more potential sites, yet excavating them is like chasing mirages. Each discovery raises new questions. Whether Aram was Ubar, a metaphor, or something still undiscovered, its legacy endures as a mirror to our own world. In an era of skyscrapers and unchecked ambition, the story of a kingdom that dared to challenge the heavens only to vanish without a trace feels less like ancient history and more like a warning etched in sand. Off the rugged coast of Cornwall, where the Atlantic's fury meets the cliffs of Land's End, lies a haunting tale of love, betrayal, and a kingdom lost beneath the waves' Lyonesse. This land wasn't just any realm, it was the fabled home of Tristan, the tragic hero of Arthurian legend, whose doomed love for Isolde became a story whispered across centuries. According to lore, Lyonesse was a fertile plain dotted with prosperous towns and lush forests, connected to the Isles of Scilly by a causeway. But in a single cataclysmic night, the sea surged over its walls, drowning the kingdom and leaving only the cry of church bells ringing beneath the water. What makes Lyonesse unique among lost kingdoms is how deeply it's woven into the cultural fabric of Cornwall. Fishermen still speak of glimpsing stone walls beneath the waves at low tide, or hearing the distant toll of submerged bells during storms. The legend even seeped into literature. Tennyson's Idylls of the King describes Lyonesse as a land where now the sea flows and the tall ships sail. But could this poetic tragedy have roots in real history? Geologists point to a compelling clue: the submerged landmass between Cornwall and the Scilly Isles. Around 5,000 years ago, rising sea levels transformed this area from habitable land into shallow ocean. Core samples reveal drowned forests and peat beds beneath the waves, evidence of a once thriving coastline. In 2014, a team mapping the seabed discovered a prehistoric river valley, now submerged, further supporting the idea that Lyonesse might echo a collective memory of coastal flooding. Even the name Scilly could derive from sully, an old Cornish word for sunken. Yet Lyonesse isn't just about geology, it's a mirror to human resilience. The tale of Tristan and Isolde, set against the kingdom's fall, transforms Lyonesse into a metaphor for love's fragility in the face of inevitable change. Local traditions lean into this duality. Some claim the bells of Lyonesse only ring to warn of impending disaster, while others say they chime to guide lost sailors home. Whether Lyonesse was a single drowned settlement or a patchwork of flooded villages merged into legend, its power endures. It reminds us that the sea doesn't just erase, it preserves stories in the silt and sand, waiting for the right tide to bring them back to light. And perhaps that's the real magic of Lyonesse, not just a kingdom lost, but a story that refuses to drown. Beneath our feet, hidden in the uncharted depths of the planet's crust, some believe an entire civilization thrives in perpetual twilight. Agartha, the legendary kingdom at the heart of Hollow Earth theories. While most lost realms vanish beneath waves or sand, Agartha supposedly exists in a labyrinth of tunnels and vast caverns, illuminated by an inner sun, home to an advanced race of beings who have mastered forgotten sciences. But how did this fantastical idea take root? The story begins not with modern conspiracy theories, but with ancient Tibetan traditions. Buddhist texts speak of Shambhala, a hidden sanctuary of enlightened sages, while Himalayan legends describe tunnels leading to subterranean cities guarded by mystics. These tales merged with European esotericism in the 18th century, when astronomer Edmund Halley proposed Earth might be hollow to explain magnetic anomalies. a theory later embellished by writers like Jules Verne, whose journey to the center of the Earth painted a vivid picture of underground oceans and prehistoric creatures. The myth took a darker turn in the 20th century when Nazi occultists, obsessed with proving Aryan superiority, latched onto Agartha as the ancestral home of a master race. Expeditions like the one led by Ernst Scheffer in 1938 scoured Tibet for entrances to this underworld, convinced the subterranean kingdom held advanced technology, perhaps even the vril energy described in Edward Bulwer Lytton's occult novel The Coming Race. Post-war, the legend mutated further, with ufologists claiming Agartha's inhabitants were extraterrestrials or survivors of Atlantis, using flying saucers to traverse the Earth's interior. But here's the twist: geology unequivocally disproves the hollow Earth hypothesis. Seismic waves reveal Earth's layered structure, and no hidden sun or caverns large enough to host a civilization exist. Yet Agartha endures, less as a physical place and more as a metaphor. For some, it represents humanity's unconscious yearning for unexplored frontiers. For others, it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of pseudoscience and ideological obsession. Modern iterations appear in movies, video games, and even NASA conspiracy theories, proving that even in an age of satellites and deep-sea submersibles, we still crave the idea of secrets lurking just out of sight, especially if they're buried beneath us, waiting. To the ancient Greeks and Romans, the far north wasn't just a blank space on the map. It was the realm of Thule, a land so distant it straddled the line between geography and myth. The first written account comes from the Greek explorer Pytheas in the 4th century BCE, who claimed to have sailed beyond Britain to a place where the sun barely set in summer, and the sea congealed into a slushy mass he called the marine lung. His descriptions of Thule, where fire and ice coexisted, and the very air seemed to shimmer with magic, captivated imaginations for centuries. Some scholars think Pytheas might have reached Norway's midnight sun coast or Iceland's geothermal fields, where geysers spewed steam like dragon's breath. Others argue his Thule was Shetland or the Faroe Islands, transformed through the haze of sailors' tales into something fantastical. By the Roman era, Thule had become shorthand for the edge of the known world. The poet Virgil used it as a symbol of ultimate remoteness, while the historian Tacitus speculated it might be Scandinavia, homeland of the fierce Feni tribes. But as Europe slipped into the Dark Ages, Thule's meaning grew murkier. Medieval maps placed it near Greenland or even conflated it with the mythical island of Ultima Thule, a place beyond borders where reality itself seemed to fray. Then came the 20th century, and Thule's legacy took a sinister turn. Nazi occultists obsessed with proving Aryan supremacy latched onto Thule as the lost homeland of a pure Nordic race. The Thule Society, a secretive group that counted Rudolf Hess among its members, blended Arctic myths with racist pseudoscience, insisting that their namesake land had been the cradle of civilization before falling into ruin. This twisted ideology fueled expeditions to Iceland and Greenland, where SS officers scoured sagas and glaciers for proof of their delusions. The irony. Modern archaeology reveals how far the Nazis missed the mark. Thule wasn't a master race's paradise. It was likely a patchwork of real places distorted through centuries of retelling. The Thule culture, ancestors of today's Inuit, thrived in the Arctic long after Pytheas's voyage, leaving behind intricate tools and sod houses that speak of resilience, not racial purity. Even the name Thule endures today in Greenland's Thule Air Base, a Cold War relic now called Connaught, where the distant echoes of myth collide with the stark realities of geopolitics and melting ice. Perhaps Thule's greatest lesson is how easily exploration can tip into exploitation, how the hunger to claim a legend can warp it beyond recognition. Whether it was Iceland's lava fields, Norway's fjords, or simply a sailor's tall tale, the real Thule wasn't a prize to be conquered. It was always just out of reach, a reminder that the world's edges are never quite where we think they are. Off the western coast of Wales, where the Irish Sea meets Cardigan Bay, the tides reveal more than just sand and shells. They uncover whispers of Cantre'r Gwaelod, the Sunken Hundred. This drowned kingdom isn't just another Atlantis knockoff. It's a story steeped in Welsh bardic tradition where tragedy blends with the rhythmic crash of waves. According to legend, Cantre'r Gwaelod was a fertile lowland realm protected by an intricate system of dikes and sluice gates maintained by two princes. But one night, during a grand feast, the gatekeeper tasked with holding back the sea, a man named Sunken, drank too much mead and neglected his duty. The waters rushed in, drowning the kingdom and its people, leaving only the mournful peal of church bells heard by fishermen on calm days. What sets Cantre'r Gwaelod apart is how deeply personal the legend feels to Welsh identity. Unlike grand empires lost to hubris, this was a land of farmers and shepherds, swallowed by a mistake as human as forgetting to close a door. The tale first appears in the Black Book of Carmarthen, a 13th-century manuscript where poetry paints the kingdom's fate. The sea covered homes, the gods wept, and the land became memory. But here's the fascinating twist: geology suggests this wasn't just poetic license. Cardigan Bay's seabed hides clues. During the last ice age, sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower, exposing vast tracts of habitable land. As glaciers melted, the water rose steadily, swallowing coastal settlements over generations. Sonar scans have revealed submerged forests and peat beds off the Welsh coast, some with human-made post holes still visible, proof that communities once thrived where now only fish swim. Even the kingdom's name hints at truth. Gwaelod means lowland, a fitting descriptor for plains vulnerable to encroaching tides. The legend's endurance isn't just about drowned land, though. Cantre'r Gwaelod mirrors universal anxieties: climate change, human error, the fragility of home. Locals still debate whether Sunken was a drunkard or a scapegoat for a slower disaster, like poorly maintained flood defenses. Modern parallels are hard to ignore. Today, Wales faces rising seas that could reclaim another 30 square miles by the end of the century, turning myth into prophecy. Perhaps that's why the bells of Cantre'r Gwaelod still echo in Welsh culture, from folk songs to children's books. The kingdom may lie beneath the waves, but its story is very much awake, a reminder that the sea doesn't just erase, it remembers, and sometimes it sings. While Atlantis dominated Western imaginations, the Pacific Ocean had its own contender for a sunken supercivilization, Mu, the so-called motherland of man. First proposed in the 19th century by French archaeologist Augustus Le Plongeon, Mu was described as a vast continent spanning the Pacific, home to an advanced society that predated even Egypt. According to Le Plongeon, who studied Mayan ruins in Yucatan, hieroglyphs told of this lost homeland destroyed by volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. But here's the catch: mainstream scholars universally dismiss his translations as pure invention, arguing he twisted Mayan texts to fit his own narrative. Mu's myth gained traction thanks to James Churchward, a British occultist who claimed in the 1920s that he'd uncovered ancient tablets in India describing Mu's high culture, a utopia of 60 million people with flying machines and energy weapons. Churchward insisted Mu had sunk beneath the waves 50,000 years ago, leaving only scattered islands like Easter Island as remnants. His books, blending archaeology with mysticism, captivated audiences hungry for alternatives to conventional history. But geologists quickly pointed out a glaring flaw: the Pacific seafloor lacks any evidence of a sunken continent. Unlike Atlantis, which at least had the volcanic eruption of Thera as a plausible inspiration, Mu's existence contradicts plate tectonics. The Pacific's geological history shows no signs of a landmass large enough to host a civilization vanishing overnight. Yet the legend persists, often tied to Easter Island's enigmatic Moai statues. Some fringe theorists argue the island's massive stone figures are relics of Mu's refugees, who supposedly brought advanced carving techniques. but radiocarbon dating proves the moai were carved between 1250 and 1500 CE, long after Mu's alleged demise. Similarly, the underwater Yonaguni monument off Japan's coast, often cited as a Mu artifact, is widely regarded by geologists as natural sandstone formations shaped by currents. So why does Mu endure? Like Atlantis, it taps into a deeper human fascination, the idea that our ancestors were wiser, more connected before some cataclysm scattered their knowledge. Modern iterations of Mu appear in anime, video games, and New Age theories, where it's recast as a hub of crystal energy or alien technology. The irony is rich. A kingdom invented by mistranslation now thrives in pop culture, proving that sometimes the most powerful lost realms aren't those buried by time, but those born from our longing for a forgotten golden age. Deep in the shifting sands of the Sahara, where mirages dance on the horizon and the air shimmers with heat, lies a legend as elusive as the desert wind Zerzura, the oasis of little birds. Unlike the drowned cities or jungle-hidden treasures we've explored, Zerzura's magic lies in its paradox, a lush, verdant refuge said to bloom impossibly in the heart of the world's harshest desert. Arab chronicles from the 13th century describe it as a white-walled city, its gates carved with a bird's image guarded by sleeping giants. Inside, fountains gushed with cold water, date palms bent under the weight of fruit, and songbirds flitted through gardens untouched by drought. But the cruelest twist, those who found Zerzura could never return to tell of it, vanishing as if the desert itself swallowed their memories. The legend might have stayed confined to campfire tales if not for the audacious explorers who dared to chase it. Enter Laszlo Almasi, the real-life inspiration for the English patient. In the 1930s, this Hungarian aristocrat turned desert enthusiast scoured the Libyan desert for Zerzura, convinced it was one of several lost oases mentioned in medieval texts like the Kitab al-Kanaz, a treasure hunter's guide to hidden Saharan riches. Almasi's expeditions, often funded by European royalty, blended cutting-edge aviation with Bedouin navigation. He'd crisscross the desert in a biplane, landing near potential sites to search on foot. His most tantalizing clue, the Zerzura Massif, a rocky outcrop near the Egypt-Libya border where he claimed to find frescoes of swimmers in a cave, proof, he argued, that the Sahara hadn't always been a wasteland. Geology lends eerie credence to these tales. Satellite imagery reveals ancient riverbeds beneath the sand, remnants of a green Sahara, period between 9,000 and 5,000 years ago when monsoons turned the desert into a savanna. Could Zerzura be a distorted memory of these lost wetlands? The Gilf Kebir Plateau, where Almasi searched, holds caves with Neolithic paintings of giraffes and lakes, suggesting humans once thrived there. Even today, the desert occasionally coughs up secrets like the discovery of the Eye of the Sahara, a massive geological formation so striking it's been erroneously linked to Atlantis. But Zerzura's allure isn't just about water in the sand. It's a story of human obsession, of how myths shape exploration. Almasi's quest bled into World War II intrigue, as he allegedly used his knowledge of desert routes to aid German spies. Later, Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi fueled rumors of a real Zerzura, claiming his regime had found it but would keep its location hidden. Modern archaeologists roll their eyes at such claims, yet the legend persists, morphing into metaphor. For Saharan nomads, Zerzura represents the fleeting nature of survival, a reminder that abundance and ruin are separated by the thinnest of margins. Perhaps that's why Zerzura endures. It's not just a place, but a lesson written in sand, that the most precious kingdoms aren't always those we find, but those we imagine, pushing us to venture beyond the edges of the known. And in a world where deserts keep expanding, the dream of an oasis where birds still sing feels more urgent than ever. For the Polynesian people, scattered across thousands of miles of open ocean, the past isn't buried, it sails on the horizon. Hawaii isn't just a lost kingdom, It's the beating heart of their ancestral memory, a homeland whispered in chants, carved into tattoos and woven through the stars that guided their voyages. Unlike the drowned cities or desert mirages of other legends, Hawaii lives in the very bones of Polynesian culture. To the Maori of New Zealand, it's the place their waka or canoes departed from. To Hawaiians, it's the realm of the gods where fire goddess Pele emerged before her journey to the islands. But here's the mystery: was Hawaii a single island, a cluster of them, or something far more profound? Oral traditions paint Hawaii as both a physical and spiritual realm. Maori elders speak of it as a land of towering breadfruit trees and sweet springs, where ancestors fished from shores now lost to time. Hawaiian malilo, or stories, describe it as a place of creation where the first humans were shaped from red earth. Yet dig deeper and you'll find clues that Hawaii might not be entirely mythical. Linguists note the name's resonance across Polynesia, Save in Samoa, Aveki in the Cook Islands, even distant Java in Indonesia, hinting at a shared cultural memory of origin. Some scholars argue these names point to real locations, perhaps Samoa or the Marquesas, where early Polynesians staged their epic migrations. Archaeology adds another layer. The Lapita people, ancestors of modern Polynesians, left trails of distinctive pottery across the Pacific as they island hopped around 3,000 years ago. Could Hawaii be a collective memory of their earliest settlements, like those found in Tonga or Fiji? Genetic studies of Polynesian rats carried intentionally in canoes as food trace their lineage back to the same regions. Even the stars align literally. Polynesian navigators used the rising of Pleiades, called Matariki or Makale, to mark the season for voyages. Some chants describe Hawaii as lying where the sky meets the sea, a poetic nod to celestial navigation. But Hawaii's true power lies in its duality. For all the theories about physical locations, it's also a touchstone for identity. When Maori performers stomp their feet in a haka, they're channeling the spirits of Hawaii. When Hawaiian hula dancers sway to chants of Pele's journey, they're retracing steps across an ocean of memory. The kingdom may be lost to maps, but it's vividly alive in language, dance, and the rhythmic dip of paddles against waves. Perhaps that's the lesson of Hawaii, that some homelands aren't meant to be found on any chart because they live in the stories we carry and the paths we still follow. On the storm-lashed shores of the Baltic Sea, where Germanic and Slavic cultures once collided, fishermen still trade warnings about the city beneath the waves' Vinter, the Atlantis of the north. This wasn't just any drowned metropolis. According to medieval chronicles, it was a Viking-era trading hub so wealthy that its streets were paved with amber, its merchants clothed in silk, and its wine cellars never empty. But like so many legendary cities, Vinter's prosperity came with a price. Some say its people grew arrogant, hoarding riches while mocking the gods. Others whisper of a curse cast by a wronged mermaid or a betrayed sorcerer. Whatever the sin, the punishment was swift and brutal. One tempestuous night, the sea surged over the city walls, dragging towers, treasures, and sinners into the depths. To this day, locals claim you can hear Vinter's bells tolling beneath the waves when storms roll, in a ghostly reminder of the perils of greed. But could this haunting legend have roots in real history? The Baltic coastline is littered with sunken settlements, victims of a phenomenon called post-glacial rebound. As the last ice age's glaciers retreated, the land they once crushed began slowly rising, while other areas, like Vinter's supposed location near modern-day Euston Island, sank. Archaeologists have found submerged wharves and Slavic pottery in the Bay of Greifswald, dating to the 10th century CE, precisely when Vinter was said to flourish. Even more compelling are records from the chronicler Adam of Bremen, who described a bustling Slavic port called Jumni in the 11th century, so cosmopolitan that Saxon, Danish, and Wendish traders bartered side by side. Could Jumni have been the real Vinter, its name distorted over centuries of retelling? the truth might lie in the Baltic's violent storms. In 1300, the Grote Mandrank Great Drowning of Men flood wiped out entire villages along these coasts. Folk memory could have merged this disaster with older tales of Jumna's decline, as shifting trade routes drained its wealth long before waves claimed its ruins. Divers exploring the bay have spotted strange shapes in the murk, rectangular stones that might be foundations or just whims of the current. What makes Vinta endure isn't just the allure of lost gold, though. It's how the story bends to fit whoever tells it. German romantics painted Vinta as a Slavic Sodom, destroyed for moral decay. Polish poets reimagined it as a utopia of tolerance shattered by outside envy. Modern ecologists see it as a metaphor for rising seas and climate hubris. Perhaps that's the fate of all sunken kingdoms, to become mirrors reflecting whatever we fear or long for most. Next time you hear thunder over the Baltic, listen close. The waves might still be whispering Vinta's name. High in the snow-capped peaks of the Himalayas, where the air thins and the horizon blurs into sky, Tibetan Buddhists have whispered of Shambhala for over 1,000 years, a hidden kingdom of enlightenment, shielded from the unworthy by impassable mountains and illusions. But this isn't just a fabled paradise. In Buddhist scripture, particularly the Kalachakra Tantra, Shambhala is described with startling specificity. A circular realm of 8 snow-mantled regions radiating from a palace of crystal and gold, where rulers maintain cosmic order through meditation and wisdom. The texts even provide a prophecy when the world is overrun by greed and warfare. The 25th king of Shambhala, Rigden Jai, will emerge with an army to restore balance, heralding a golden age. What makes Shambhala extraordinary is how it straddles the line between metaphor and geography. Ancient Tibetan maps place it north of the Himalayas, possibly in the Kunlun Mountains or the Taklamakan Desert. The Kalachakra teachings, literally Wheel of Time, describe routes to Shambhala through coded landscapes, rivers of mercury, valleys guarded by spirits, bridges visible only to the enlightened. Some scholars argue these are allegorical obstacles representing stages of spiritual growth, while others insist they point to real locations. The 19th century Russian mystic Nicholas Roerich claimed to have found evidence of Shambhala in the Altai Mountains, where locals spoke of a hidden valley called Belovedai, echoing Buddhist descriptions. Yet Shambhala's journey into Western imagination twisted its essence. Theosophists like Helena Blavatsky reimagined it as a repository of occult knowledge, home to telepathic masters. The Nazis, ever hungry for esoteric justifications, sent expeditions to Tibet seeking Shambhala's Aryan wisdom, blending Buddhist lore with racist pseudoscience. Even modern pop culture reduces it to a Shangri-La knockoff, a misty retreat for immortal sages. This appropriation overlooks the profound philosophy at Shambhala's core. It's not a place to be found, but a state to be realized. The Dalai Lama himself has clarified that while Shambhala may exist geographically, its true significance lies in the Kalachakra teachings, a path to inner peace amid outer chaos. Perhaps that's why the myth endures. In a world of climate crises and conflict, the idea of a kingdom where enlightened rulers wield compassion instead of weapons feels less like fantasy and more like a mirror showing us not what we've lost, but what we might still become. Across the Emerald Hills of Ireland, where mist curls like smoke from ancient storytellers' lips, there's a land where time stands still, Turnain Og, the land of the young. This isn't just another hidden kingdom, it's the heart of Celtic mythology's vision of the afterlife, a realm where sorrow, age, and death hold no power. Picture an island shimmering on the horizon, cloaked in perpetual golden light, its orchards heavy with fruit that never rots, its rivers flowing with wine instead of water. To reach it, one must either brave the sea's treacherous currents or be summoned by its mystical inhabitants, the Tuatha De Danann Island's godlike ancestors who retreated there when mortal humans claimed the surface world. The most famous mortal to cross into Tir na an Og was Oisin, the warrior poet of the Fianna. Legends say he was lured there by Niamh of the golden hair, a Tuatha Dé princess who rode across the waves on a white horse to offer him eternal youth and love. For what felt like 3 blissful years, Oisin lived in paradise, feasting, hunting, and composing songs under skies untouched by storms, but homesickness eventually gnawed at him. Niamh warned him never to set foot on mortal soil again, yet when Oisin returned to Ireland on her enchanted steed, he made a fatal mistake disobeying her command. He stumbled onto the earth. In an instant, 3 centuries caught up with him, his body withering into dust as Tir na an Og vanished like a dream. This tragic tale isn't just a whimsical fable, it's a window into Celtic beliefs about time, mortality, and the soul's journey. Unlike the Christian heaven, Tir na an Og wasn't a reward for virtue but a parallel world where joy and creativity flourished unchecked. The Tuatha Dé Danann weren't gods in the traditional sense. They were liminal beings existing between realms, capable of great kindness and capricious cruelty. Their land reflected the Celtic reverence for nature's cycle's eternal spring as the antithesis of winter's decay. Archaeology hints at why this myth resonated so deeply. Ireland's passage tombs like Newgrange, older than the pyramids, align with solstices, suggesting an ancient obsession with transcending time. Even the name Tir na an Og echoes in folklore off the coast of County Kerry. Locals once spoke of High Brassel, a phantom island that appeared every 7 years draped in mist. Could these stories be fractured memories of pre-Christian afterlife beliefs, or perhaps even half-remembered encounters with distant lands like the Azores, glimpsed by early sailors? Modern retellings often sanitize Tir na an Og as a generic fairyland, but its darker edges reveal deeper truths. Oisin's fate warns of the cost of clinging to the past. His longing for home destroyed him, just as mortals who overstay in the otherworld often return to find their loved ones long dead. The Celts understood that immortality isn't a gift without sacrifice, that true paradise might require leaving everything behind. Today, Tir na an Og lives on in music, poetry, and the quiet moments when sunlight breaks through Irish clouds like a gateway to another world. It reminds us that every culture dreams of a place where joy doesn't fade, but the price of entry is often the very thing we can't bear to lose. For centuries, medieval Europe clung to a tantalizing dream somewhere beyond the known world, beyond the reach of Saracens and schisms. There ruled a Christian king of unimaginable power and piety. His name was Prester John, and his legendary kingdom became an obsession for popes, emperors, and explorers alike. The myth first bloomed in 1245 when a mysterious letter, supposedly penned by Prester John himself, began circulating among European courts. It described a realm overflowing with marvels, rivers of gold flowing from paradise, forests teeming with unicorns, and a palace built of crystal where the king presided over 72 lesser monarchs. But the real allure wasn't just the wealth, it was the promise of an ally. Here, at last, was a Christian ruler powerful enough to crush Islam from the rear while crusaders pushed from the west. The letter's origins were likely a clever forgery, possibly crafted by a Frankish scribe hoping to rally support for the failing crusades. Yet the legend took on a life of its own, shape shifting to fit the gaps in European maps. Initially, Prester John's kingdom was placed in Asia, somewhere beyond Persia, fitting neatly into Marco Polo's accounts of Nestorian Christian communities along the Silk Road. But as Mongol Khans proved less than sympathetic to Christendom, the myth migrated. By the 1400s, Portuguese navigators had relocated Prester John to Africa, convinced he ruled over Ethiopia's highlands. After all, Ethiopia was Christian, isolated, and shrouded in mystery, perfect fodder for the imagination. Explorers like Vasco da Gama carried letters addressed to Prester John as they rounded the Cape of Good Hope, hoping to forge an alliance against Muslim-controlled trade routes. Even the Vatican sent emissaries, including the Franciscan friar Francisco Alves, who spent 6 years at the court of Emperor Lemuria. Imagine his disappointment when he found not a glittering utopia, but a rugged mountain kingdom locked in constant warfare with its neighbors. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, while ancient, bore little resemblance to Rome's Catholicism. Its rituals included circumcision and Sabbath observances that baffled European visitors. Yet the Prester John myth didn't die, it evolved. When Ethiopia's Christians repelled a Muslim invasion in 1543 with Portuguese help, it briefly reignited hopes of a pan-Christian coalition. Later, as Europeans probed the Americas, some Jesuit missionaries spun new theories. Perhaps Prester John's descendants had crossed the Atlantic, explaining the civilized traits of the Aztecs. The irony is exquisite. A fictional king shaped real-world geopolitics, driving expeditions, wars, and diplomatic gambits for over 500 years. What makes Prester John's legend endure isn't just its audacity, but its humbling lesson. In an age of Google Maps and satellite imagery, it's easy to scoff at medieval cartography's blank spaces filled with monsters and miracles. But replace unicorns with UFOs or Prester John with modern conspiracy theories, and the pattern feels familiar. We still invent saviors and utopias to explain the unknown, still project our hopes onto the edges of the map. The real lost kingdom wasn't in Africa or Asia. It was the perfect future Europeans kept chasing, always just beyond the next horizon. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, where vines strangle ancient stones and howler monkeys pierce the humid air, there's a legend that refuses to die: Paititi, the last refuge of the Incas' vanished gold. Unlike El Dorado's glittering mirage, this lost city carries the weight of history. When Spanish conquistadors stormed Cusco in 1533, they found temples sheeted in gold, but the real treasure had already vanished. According to Inca chroniclers, the Emperor Manco Inca, fleeing the invaders, ordered his people to strip the sacred Coricancha temple and carry its wealth into the jungle. Somewhere in the labyrinth of cloud forests and river gorges, they built a new capital, a city so hidden that even the stars couldn't betray its location. The Spaniards heard whispers of this place, Paititi, meaning House of the Jaguar in Quechua, but no amount of torture could extract its secret. Over time, the story merged with El Dorado, becoming a single golden fever in the European mind. Yet for the indigenous people, Paititi was never about treasure. It was a sanctuary, a place where Inca traditions could survive untouched by colonial brutality. Jesuit missionaries in the 1600s wrote of converts who spoke of a hidden kingdom where the old gods still ruled, guarded by warriors who painted their faces with obsidian dust. Fast forward to modern times, and Paititi's legend has drawn expeditions armed with drones and LiDAR instead of swords and torches. In 2001, Italian archaeologist Mario Poglia discovered a 17th-century missionary's report in the Vatican archives, describing a city rich in gold and silver near a waterfall deep in the Peruvian jungle, coordinates that matched the remote Megantoni region. Around the same time, French explorer Thierry Jamin began investigating strange geometric formations spotted near the Lemuria River, convinced they were terraces built by the Inca. Then came the bombshell. Satellite images in 2012 revealed what appeared to be pyramidal structures under dense foliage near the border of Brazil and Peru. But here's the catch: the Amazon doesn't surrender its secrets easily. Some researchers argue Paititi wasn't a city at all, but a network of hidden settlements, a guerrilla capital for Inca resistance. Others point to the ruins of Lactapota, an outpost on the Inca Trail, as proof the empire extended far into the jungle. The most compelling evidence might lie in the Cuero people, direct descendants of the Inca, who still speak of Paititi as a living spiritual realm accessible only to those pure of heart. The search continues, a dance between science and myth. In 2019, a Polish-Peruvian team claimed to find a massive stone fortress in the Andes, while indigenous activists warn against outsiders plundering sacred sites. Paititi's real treasure isn't gold, it's the unanswered question of what survives when an empire falls. Did the Inca's heart keep beating in some shadowed valley, or is this just another story we tell to console ourselves that not everything can be conquered? The jungle keeps its silence, leaving us to wonder, sometimes is disappearance the only true victory? The deserts of the American Southwest weren't supposed to hide gleaming metropolises until a shipwrecked friar spun a tale that would ignite a century of madness. In 1528, Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca stumbled out of the Texas wilderness after 8 years lost among indigenous tribes, his body scarred, his mind filled with whispers of cities so vast their streets shimmered with gold. By the time his story reached Mexico City, those whispers had hardened into certainty. Somewhere north of the Rio Grande lay the Siete Ciudades de Oro, the 7 cities of gold, each one said to rival the splendor of Tenochtitlan. What Cabeza de Vaca actually heard remains a mystery. Some scholars argue he misconstrued Zuni or Hopi accounts of their multi-story pueblos, their walls plastered with mica that glittered like metal in the sun. Others believe he encountered trade rumors of the ancestral Puebloans' ruins at Choco Canyon, where turquoise and macaw feathers from Mesoamerica once flowed. But for the Spanish, already drunk on Aztec and Inca plunder, the distinction didn't matter. In 1540, Francisco Vázquez de Coronado led an army of 300 soldiers and 1,000 indigenous allies into what's now Arizona and New Mexico, armed with a viceroy's blessing and a guide's lie. The reality proved brutally disappointing. Coronado's men found the Zuni village of Huaca, a modest adobe settlement that, while impressive, held no gold. The Spaniards sacked it anyway, desperate to justify their quest. Pushing deeper, they encountered Acoma Pueblo, Sky City, perched atop a 300-foot mesa. Its residents hurled stones rather than surrender, but their defiance couldn't stop Coronado's fever. By the time he reached the Great Plains and met the nomadic Quivira people, eating raw bison liver to survive, the myth had crumbled. The expedition returned bankrupt, its leader disgraced, yet the legend refused to die, mutating with each retelling. Later Spanish maps labeled Kansas as Quivira, while Jesuit missionaries insisted the cities lay farther west. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680, which drove colonists out of New Mexico for 12 years, only deepened the mystery had the rebels hidden the gold. Centuries later, American settlers would revive the myth during the gold rush, scouring the Grand Canyon for Egyptian-style ruins. The 7 cities' true legacy isn't buried treasure, but the collision of storytelling and greed. Coronado's failure reveals how easily desire distorts reality, how a glittering mirage can rewrite maps and upend lives. Even today, New Mexico's Zuni people chuckle at the irony. Their ancestors' homes, built to withstand drought and time, became the stuff of European fantasy because someone mistook sunlight on clay for gold. Perhaps that's the lesson of all lost kingdoms, not that they vanish, but that we see in them exactly what we're desperate to find. In the dense forests of central Russia, where Orthodox Christianity and older pagan beliefs intertwine like roots, there's a legend of a city that refused to fall not to fire or sword, but to the mercy of holy waters. Kaitush, the invisible city, is said to have vanished beneath the glassy surface of Lake Svetloyar in the 13th century, escaping the Mongol hordes not through battle but through divine intervention. The story begins with Prince Georgy Vsevolodovich, who founded 2 cities, Lesser Kaitush, a humble trading post, and Greater Kaitush, a spiritual sanctuary hidden deep in the woods. When Batu Khan's golden horde invaded, Lesser Kaitush fell easily, but as the invaders pressed toward Greater Kaitush, something miraculous happened. The citizens prayed fervently, and suddenly the earth itself seemed to weep. Springs burst forth, swallowing the city whole. leaving only the faint outline of church domes beneath the lake's surface, a sacred fortress preserved beneath the waves, visible only to the pure of heart. What makes Cantre'r extraordinary is how it straddles history and holiness. Unlike Atlantis or El Dorado, this wasn't a tale of pride or greed punished, but of faith rewarded. Russian Orthodox tradition holds that Cantre'r's bells still chime on quiet nights, their echoes rising through the water like a call to prayer. Pilgrims have flocked to Lake Svetloya for centuries, circling its shores barefoot, chanting hymns in hopes of glimpsing the city's golden spires through the mist. Some claim to have heard ghostly choirs or seen the flicker of candlelight deep below, phenomena scientists dismiss as methane bubbles or atmospheric tricks, but believers interpret as proof of Cantre'r's enduring grace. Archaeologists have tried to unravel the mystery. Expeditions in the 1960s and 70s probed the lake with sonar, discovering underwater terraces that could be natural formations or the remnants of man-made structures. Divers found a peculiar wooden post embedded in the silt, its purpose unknown, while locals whispered it was a fragment of Cantre'r's gates. Skeptics point to the lake's origins as a glacial sinkhole, its depths shaped by shifting karst formations, but even they can't explain why the area radiates such uncanny stillness. The legend's power lies in its adaptability. To old believers, Cantre'r is a promised refuge from persecution, a symbol of resistance against corrupt authority. Soviet atheists recast it as a metaphor for the victory of collective spirit over oppression. Modern artists and composers, from Rimsky-Korsakov's opera to Tarkovsky's films, have reimagined it as a beacon of lost purity in a fractured world. And in a twist of irony, the lake itself has become a mirror for our own anxieties. Climate activists now warn that warming temperatures could drain Svetloya, leaving Cantre'r's secrets exposed just as earthly crises mount. Perhaps that's why the story endures. Cantre'r isn't just a sunken city. It's a promise that some things, faith, resilience, the refusal to be conquered, can never truly be destroyed. They merely wait, silent and shimmering, for the moment we're ready to believe in them again. Among the most persistent legends in human history is the mystery of the 10 lost tribes of Israel, vanished without a trace after the Assyrian conquest in the 8th century BCE, yet somehow leaving echoes of their existence in every corner of the world. The biblical account is stark. When the northern kingdom of Israel fell, its people were forcibly exiled, scattered to distant lands beyond the Euphrates. But unlike other vanished civilizations, these tribes didn't fade into oblivion. Instead, their story became a mirror, reflecting the hopes, fears, and obsessions of countless cultures across millennia. From the moment of their disappearance, speculation about their fate spiraled into myth. Jewish texts like the Book of Esdras describe the tribes crossing a mystical river called Sambatyon, whose raging currents ceased only on the Sabbath, making it impassable. Medieval maps placed them in the shadowy realms beyond Gog and Magog, while European explorers, convinced the tribes held the key to biblical prophecy, searched for them everywhere from Ethiopia's highlands to the Americas. When Spanish conquistadors encountered the Pueblo peoples of the Southwest, they noted their intricate laws and communal rituals, sparking theories that these were descendants of Hebrew settlers. Centuries later, British colonists in New England pointed to Native American burial mounds as evidence of the lost tribes' migration, a convenient narrative to justify their own expansion as a divine reunion. Even today, the myth adapts. The Lemba people of southern Africa carry genetic markers linking them to Jewish ancestry, while in India, the Bini Manash claim descent from the tribe of Manasseh. In Japan, the enigmatic Ainu people have been similarly linked, their customs and language scrutinized for Hebraic traces, yet historians remain deeply skeptical. Genetic studies, while revealing fascinating diasporic connections, don't support a single, sweeping narrative of the tribe's survival. The Assyrians, meticulous record keepers, documented their policy of forced assimilation, suggesting the tribes likely dissolved into the populations they were resettled among, their identity eroded within generations. Why then does the legend persist? Perhaps because the lost tribes represent something far greater than history. They embody the longing for a hidden thread of continuity, a secret kinship binding disparate cultures. For some, they're a promise proof that no oppression is final, that the scattered can one day return. For others, they're a Rorschach test, revealing more about the seeker than the sought. In the end, the tribe's greatest legacy might not be where they went, but how their disappearance became a canvas for humanity's endless storytelling, a mystery we keep solving, only to find new questions waiting beneath. Beneath the turquoise waters off the coast of modern-day Gujarat, where the Arabian Sea washes over ancient tides, lies a legend that bridges myth and marine science, the sunken city of Dwarka. According to Hindu scriptures, this wasn't just any city, but the celestial kingdom of Lord Krishna himself, a realm of towering gates and golden spires said to have vanished beneath the waves when its divine ruler departed the earth. The Mahabharata describes Dwarka in dazzling detail, a fortified metropolis with wide boulevards, palaces adorned with emeralds, and a harbor bustling with ships from distant lands. But what sets Dwarka apart from other lost kingdoms is how insistently it refuses to stay confined to legend. In the 1980s, marine archaeologists made a startling discovery near present-day Dwarka. Submerged structures, massive stone blocks, pottery shards, and even what appeared to be an ancient wharf began emerging from the seabed. Carbon dating placed some artifacts as far back as 1500 BC, aligning roughly with the traditional timeline of Krishna's reign. Then came the real bombshell. Sonar scans revealed a grid-like pattern of ruins stretching over half a mile, eerily mirroring the Mahabharata's descriptions of Dwarka's meticulously planned layout. Divers brought up stone anchors, suggesting a thriving maritime culture, while inscriptions found onshore bore the name Dwarka in archaic Brahmi script. Skeptics argue these findings could belong to a later Harappan port city, swallowed by rising sea levels around 3,500 years ago, a phenomenon well documented along India's coast. But here's where the debate gets fascinating. Ancient texts like the Skanda Purana describe Dwarka's submersion in terms that sound strikingly like a tsunami. The ocean rose, swallowing the city whole, as if the gods had pulled it beneath the waves in a single night. Geological studies confirm that Gujarat's coastline has endured catastrophic seismic events, including a massive earthquake around 1500 BC that could have triggered such a disaster. What makes Dwarka's legend so compelling is how it weaves together faith, folklore, and hard evidence. For devotees, the underwater ruins are divine validation, proof that Krishna's kingdom was real. For historians, they're a tantalizing puzzle. Could Dwarka be a cultural memory of a pre-existing city, absorbed into Hindu cosmology? Even the name holds clues. Dwarka translates to gateway or door, hinting at its role as a trade hub linking India to Mesopotamia and beyond. The search continues. Recent expeditions have uncovered more submerged structures, including a circular stone formation that some interpret as the remains of Krishna's legendary Sudarshana chakra. Yet the sea guards its secrets fiercely, with shifting sands and strong currents complicating exploration. Whether Dwarka was a literal city or a metaphor for something grander, a golden age, a spiritual ideal, its allure endures. After all, what greater mystery could there be than a kingdom said to have been built by gods, now lying just out of reach, whispering to us through crumbling stones and ancient verses? Perhaps the truth of Dwarka isn't just in its ruins, but in the way it invites us to keep diving deeper, both into the ocean and into the stories that shape who we are. Of all the vanished wonders of the ancient world, none sparks as much scholarly debate as the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a spectacle so breathtaking that poets claimed it could make a homesick princess forget her mountain homeland. Yet here's the twist: despite its fame, there's no concrete evidence it ever existed in Babylon at all. The mystery begins with the original descriptions. Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus wrote of terraced gardens soaring hundreds of feet into the air, irrigated by screw pumps drawing water from the Euphrates, their lush foliage spilling over stone balconies like a green avalanche. But here's the catch: Babylonian records never mention them. Not a single cuneiform tablet, royal inscription, or excavation at Babylon's ruins has yielded proof of these legendary gardens. This glaring absence has led some archaeologists to propose a radical theory. What if the Greeks confused Babylon with Nineveh, the capital of Assyria? In the mid-19th century, excavations at Nineveh uncovered something astonishing: an elaborate system of aqueducts and terraces built by King Sennacherib around 600 BC, decades before Babylon's supposed gardens. Sennacherib's own inscriptions boast of engineering marvels, including water screws and exotic plants hauled from distant lands to please his queen. Even more compelling, a bas-relief from his palace depicts a sprawling garden cascading down stepped platforms, its trees supported by stone columns. Could this have been the real Hanging Gardens, misattributed by later writers? The plot thickens when we examine the geography. Babylon sits on flat, arid plains, a challenging environment for cultivating towering gardens without natural elevation. Nineveh, however, nestled against the Taurus Mountains, had access to abundant water via an intricate network of canals. Sennacherib's inscriptions even describe diverting entire rivers to nourish his palace gardens, a feat later echoed in Greek accounts. Yet the confusion might not be accidental. After the Persian Empire conquered Babylon, Greek travelers could have absorbed fragmented stories about Assyrian and Babylonian marvels, merging them into a single, misplaced wonder. But why does this matter? Because the Hanging Gardens' elusive nature forces us to question how history gets written and rewritten. Whether they bloomed in Babylon or Nineveh, their legend endures not just as a testament to human ingenuity, but as a reminder that even the grandest stories can slip through the cracks of time, leaving us to piece together the truth from whispers and fragments. And perhaps that's the real wonder, not the gardens themselves, but how a single misunderstood detail can grow into a myth that outlives empires. What makes these lost kingdoms more than just footnotes in history or flights of fancy? It's the way they live in that liminal space between fact and folklore, where the boundaries of reality blur just enough to let our imaginations run wild. These aren't merely stories of sunken cities or hidden valleys. They're mirrors reflecting our deepest fears and desires. The fear that even the greatest civilizations can vanish overnight, swallowed by the sea or erased by time. The desire to believe there's still magic lurking in the uncharted corners of our world, waiting to be rediscovered. Think about it, every culture, from the ancient Greeks to the Polynesian voyagers, has its own version of a lost paradise or a fallen empire. These legends persist because they're more than entertainment. They're cautionary tales about hubris, resilience, and the fragile balance between humanity and nature. When we hear of Atlantis drowning or Carthage disappearing beneath a lake, we're not just hearing about the past, we're confronting questions that still haunt us today. What happens when a society pushes too far? How do we hold onto our identities in the face of catastrophe? The answers might lie in the ruins we've yet to uncover or in the stories we've yet to tell. And that's the real magic of these myths. They're not static, they evolve with us. The same tale of El Dorado that once lured conquistadors to their doom is now a metaphor for the dangers of greed. Shangri-La, once a distant Himalayan fantasy, becomes a sanctuary for those yearning to escape modern chaos. These kingdoms aren't lost, they're reinvented by each generation, reflecting our changing hopes and anxieties. So what's your favorite legend? Do you believe there's a kernel of truth in these stories, or are they purely the stuff of dreams? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear which of these lost kingdoms captures your imagination. And if unraveling history's greatest mysteries keeps you hooked, don't forget to subscribe. Who knows, the next video might just uncover a secret that changes everything we thought we knew about the past. Until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, sometimes the most incredible truths are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right storyteller to bring them back.